You have storms and you have cable storms,
I
Brendan.
mean, I got storms and I got cable avalanches, but you know what, bro?
We persevere.
We never ever don't get on the air. So whatever, you know who you are,
Yesterday-
cable company.
Yeah.
Your cables came out so the new ones could come in.
And you know what?
You can't
were in
beat
an
me.
undisclosed
You
location
can't beat me.
yesterday.
I know, but we still
Hey.
got on the air, didn't we?
I loved it. Absolutely. No, I'm saying it was cool because I knew where you were, but we didn't want to give them a free commercial.
Heck no. Heck
But-
no.
But hey, look, we've got Ralph Russo, senior writer, college football writer for The Athletic, batting in the leadoff position this morning from New York. Follow us on X. Take a picture with your phone of the QR code. We're also on the YouTube channel. We got a lot of content there every day, building the best network we are able to do, and it is growing. We're drinking our coffee this morning.
Yeah,
We're going to be talking also with Yancey Porter and Rodney Orr in the second half. So let's go straight to Ralph Russo. And Ralph, you know, we were talking before the show. You had a great career as the AP National College Football writer, doing great work. I was reading one of your stories last night from the Alabama Georgia game, September 28th, and I love it. The first week of fall, and you said this crowd of over 100,000, came to watch this game. It's why we're expanding to 12 teams, and the regular season will be just fine. You can watch TV and get all the sound bites you want, but if you look at all the great giants in the industry, no offense, but they were writers. Like his dad, Buddy, like you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Look at my name line. I'm sorry, Ralph. I'm not Buddy Martin, but
no,
he was.
I know, but I'm saying
Brendan, the studio last night, so he's got his name. Sorry, Ralph. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, what Brendan's a dad, Buddy, but I love the writers. So welcome aboard. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and love the artwork in the background there. So
that's one of my wife's favorites. She loves animals.
I do too.
We do too.
Let's talk some college football and what's on your mind, because you have forgotten more than I know.
Well, you guys are way too kind and too flattering. But it's a pleasure to join the show. And there is no off season in college football anymore, as we know. It is now a 24/7, 365 sport. To a certain degree, that makes my job a lot harder.
Yeah.
But it keeps me busy and it makes sure I'm still relevant and have a job. So I don't want to complain. We're not complaining.
You're right. You're right.
It's better to be busy than the alternative, right?
That's right. Ralph, there is so much interest in college football. You're in New York. You've lived in Mississippi 5 years when you were the bureau chief for AP. But I want to see college football good all over the country. If my son moves to New York for a job, he's going to still be going to a bar somewhere, watching football and going to games. There's a ton of that goes on up there. But right now, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, those are the big four. But we don't want to lose the whole West Coast. How do you think that experiment's going? UCLA playing Rutgers on a Wednesday night volleyball.
Yeah, I listen, I think for the other sports, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's as simple as that. Even in basketball, we heard some blowback from UCLA's basketball coach, who now for some reason is like falling out of my mind this year when,
Nick Cronin.
Nick Cronin. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a long spring.
It has.
But so even on the basketball side, those long trips across country where you're basically playing a couple of days and staying away from home are challenging. And in the other sports, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's a football world, and it's a football move first. And in football, those trips are a little more manageable, right? I mean, you make it, NFL teams do them several times. It's still probably more than we should. It would be better if conferences were more regional. It's the one thing the SEC, I'll give Greg Sankey credit for. As much as the footprint has grown, it's still relatively regional, right? There's still a lot of driving that you can do in the SEC and some central hubs in Atlanta and New Orleans. The death of the Pac-12 was probably unnecessary and kind of sad. It would probably be better if those Big 12 teams in the Pac-12, those Pac-12 teams in the Big 12 and those Pac-12 teams in the Big 10 were still just playing each other and had regional rivalries. But, money, TV ratings, powers that be move the map around. I will say this, one of the things that happens with realignment, the schedules kind of get you because you get a USC Michigan matchup and you see those helmets and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. You're right. Like the Rutgers UCLA matchup, maybe not so much, but you get Ohio State maybe doing a regular season game in the Rose Bowl, Oregon, Ohio State, Washington against, Wisconsin or in Iowa, these big brands, and that the appeal becomes more apparent. So, I do think that with the way Oregon is rolling, USC's had a hard time finding its footing for a long time now. And that's just mostly a competence issue with USC, like getting the right leadership in place. UCLA's had serious issues in terms of commitment to their programs and things along those lines, especially on the football side. I think Washington will get it going. But in some ways, I think the Big Ten and all the money that it pours into those programs may actually, ironically, help some of a boost West Coast football and make it a little more relevant. So that's kind of the push and pull of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say geographically, that contiguous footprint in the SEC, in the office in Memphis, I mean, you're on the trading floor. You've got 15, 20 schools. We've always, we had our fixer that was from New York, and he worked on the trading floor. And I think about all the SEC schools, everybody going at each other. And then you think about the Yankees and Red Sox and the Yankees and Mets play. I mean, New York, it's an incredible sports town. I mean, Brendan lived there briefly, but I've been there a lot. That's what makes it so much fun. Let me ask you what you think will happen to the ACC going forward. Florida State and Clemson keep talking like they're going to leave. And at some point, something's going to happen, I guess.
Well, so a couple of months back, about a month and a half ago, ESPN weighed in and they picked up an option for its ACC contract, which runs through 2036. And there was an option there that was coming up in, I think, 25 or 6. And they decided that they picked that up. So that was a big move. It created a little stability. And I think when the arrangement was announced that, Clemson and Florida State were going to sort of, and the ACC, we were going to drop their guns, right? Everybody was going to start to play nice. They were going to go, and drop all the lawsuits.
Yeah.
I think it signaled that, like, listen, we have at least a few years of peace here. I think people are sort of circling 2030 as a point when some of the exit fees go down, and maybe it's conceivable that Clemson, Florida State, and maybe others, now we could conceivably buy our way out and it won't cost us $500 million, right? Mm-hmm. Or hundreds of millions of dollars. Those figures become a little more manageable. I think, again, it's easy to look at that and think, oh, well, that'll be the end of the ACC. As soon as everybody can leave, everybody will scatter. What I tend to tell people, Rob, is don't think of conference realignment as linear. In other words, just because what we've seen a pattern over the last 10, 12 years of schools, bigger brands get themselves in position and they move to another conference. They move up, right? They move for a promotion.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to keep trending that way, because I think by 2030, I think you could see super leagues, and I don't know if it will have the same exact structure that we have now. So I would just tell people, tap the brakes a little bit. I don't know what congressional involvement is going to mean. At some point, I think there's going to pass a bill. Maybe at some point that will help college football and college sports out a little bit. So I think there's a lot of unknowns outside of just college sports, the media landscape and how ESPN and Fox are making money, and whether some of these streamers decide that they want to get in the business of college football. So I think there's a lot of factors outside of just what we see on the field that could impact the way conferences are aligned 5, 6, 7 years from now.
Yeah, and Jackie Sherrill, you know him from when you covered Mississippi those 5 years, and he comes on the show frequently. And I remember in the fall of 1992, Touchdown Club in Memphis, he talked at length, and Brendan, Buddy Martin talked about it too, that we're going to have 4 or 5 super conferences. But Jackie Sherrill said in his most recent visit that he said if we break up the top 65, that other half, 68 or whatever, they're going to want to have their own national championship because it's just as important to them. I think that's very much likely to happen.
So I think that's possible, but my concern is that we go even a step further than that, and it's not the top 65, it's the top 32. Okay. It looks a lot more like the NFL, where it's not so much that the SEC and the Big Ten get bigger or they kick people out. It's that the very best of the best in those conferences, and the SEC is truly deeper with brands and quality and high quality. I would always put it this way: the SEC, no conference has more teams capable of winning a national championship than the SEC.
Yeah,
right. The Big Ten's got some big boys in there, but their cap on how many teams can actually win a national championship is smaller than the SEC's. But the worry for me is that it's not just the Boise's and the Bowling Greens and the Coastal Carolinas that get left behind. Maybe it's the Kansas States and the Oklahoma States and the North Carolina States and we already saw it with Oregon State and Washington State. I don't want those schools to get left behind. So we have a 30 or Vanderbilt and Mississippi State or Rutgers and Purdue. I don't want those schools left behind. So we end up with this 32 team league that's just the very best of the best, because I want the tent is as big as possible. Yeah. And I'm worried that it's not just the top 64. I'm worried that it may be that even the top 64 consolidates.
And I think that's a definite possibility, the top 32. We love the story of Horatio Alger. We love underdogs because we all grew up writing. I mean, and reading the great writers like you. That's why when I look for information, I go to The Athletic. I mean, what you all are doing, and it's these writers, and Tony Barnhart comes on here. The stories are in print. You're not going to get them with the sound bites. So next question is, who do you think in the SEC are some of the more compelling storylines, or what do you think they are? I know DJ Lagway and Billy Napier at Florida. That's a big topic. We've got the Buddy Martin show at night on this show with Gatorbait Media. But there's also a compelling story at Georgia. Gunnar Stockton. We only have a sample size from the Notre Dame game. So,
it's always easy to start with Alabama. And I could start a lot of different places, honestly. Like what you said, the DJ and Florida situation is really fascinating because Billy Napier did the thing that was supposed to be impossible last year. He played his way off the hot seat, kept his job. But I would also caution people that, things go sideways again in Florida and they have a tough schedule and they're still on the build up, we could be right back to having the same conversations about Napier. And that's what's fascinating about Florida. We could be back to having the same conversations about Napier this year as we had last year. I think in Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, I think a lot of people would sign up for 9-3 or 9-4, I guess, if you had the bowl game in their first season in a job. But not at Alabama, of course, right? No. They've recruited great. That was a big question mark about whether that staff would be able to bang heads on the recruiting trail in the SEC that doesn't have a lot of SEC recruiting. So they've done well with that. They brought in offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, who was DeBoer's right-hand man for a while, went to try the NFL, didn't work out. So maybe that helps the offense. Still looking for a quarterback. We think it's going to be Ty Simpson, but I don't know if that's set in stone yet. So just the fact that year 2 of Alabama, listen, put it this way. I've sum it up. There was a 12-team playoff and Alabama didn't make it. Just imagine, we expanded to 12 teams and Alabama wasn't one of those teams. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long you can do that at Alabama and miss the playoff and still be the Alabama coach. I don't think DeBoer is going to get fired after this year, but I just the pressure will be ramps up very quickly at a place like Alabama. So I'm really interested to see how things turn around there. And you're right. I mean, just all over the conference, there are some really compelling stories. I just got back from a trip to Texas. I stopped in Austin, where everything is rainbows and puppy dogs and unicorn. Like, it's all great in Austin now. They are loaded again.
Yeah.
Sarkisian's got, Steve Sarkisian's really got it firing all cylinders. Arch Manning, will be his first year as a starter. And then you go over to Texas A&M, where I also stopped. And I think that there's hope and reasons for optimism that things are moving in the right direction in year 2 with Mike Elko. But I would also say, it's always tricky at College Station. When things are going really well in Austin, they feel it in College Station. And I think it, again, raises some of the level of angst, at least in that fan base, when the Longhorns are rolling and the Aggies are only just trying to find their footing.
Yeah, I think that rivalry, they hate each other so bad, there's a lack of respect. And I'll say, as an Auburn man, there is respect between us and Alabama. My oldest daughter went to Alabama. Still love her. She's great. But there's that intensity that you love, and it's a great thing. One storyline I'm looking at is Hugh Freeze at Auburn. He came out publicly and talked about he has, I believe it's prostate cancer, and they're treating it, and hope everything's going to be great. But they're recruiting. They've got the roster. It looks like it was so bad when he took over. I will say it's the worst I've seen in my lifetime. And I've been following Auburn a long time. But still, you got to go out and win a lot of games. Alabama wins. Yeah, you feel it at Auburn, but Auburn feels it themselves. Is this a year where you think the Tigers, given Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight, the freshman, somebody needs to step in, but without a quarterback, you're stuck in the mud?
Yeah, and I do think that there's probably still some good stuff there with Jackson Arnold.
Yeah,
Deuce McKnight's got a pretty high ceiling. With a guy like Arnold, these 5-star level quarterbacks, I tend to feel like you got to give them a couple of chances, a couple of bites at the apple. Like, they were 5-star for a reason. I'm not saying he's going to pan out, and plenty of 5-stars don't pan out.
Oh yeah,
but I feel like I've seen enough of it there with Hugh that maybe they can get that thing rolling. But you're right. I mean, good example, right? I mean, the last 2 years, I understand there's been some building to do, but the overall record, I believe, is 11-14, 12-14, something like that over the last 2 years. Like, that's just not going to get it done at Auburn. They've recruited
11-14.
Yeah, they've recruited really well.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a significant step forward. And that's, of course, the interesting thing in the SEC, right? That's what makes the SEC so compelling. Because you have a team like Auburn, and you look at it and you go like, that should be able to compete. But the schedule is always going to be hard in the SEC. And the ability to go from 11 wins to now 11 wins over 2 years, to go from like a 6-7 team to now we're going to be 9-3. That's a hard jump. That's a really hard jump when you got to play Alabama and you got to play Georgia every year. Yeah. So, I think it's a pivotal year for Freeze. The fact of the matter is, and, listen, thoughts and prayers to you, and I hope his health is great. But the reality is, if they're sitting around like scrambling to get to 6-6 this year, we're going to have some interesting conversations about the direction of that program going forward.
Well, there's a term used in the stock market about good companies that pay dividends for 150 years without fail. They're called fallen angels. Florida and Auburn are two of those that I would buy in my portfolio if I'm a fund manager. And I think about another one, Ole Miss. I saw a podcast last week. Lane Kiffin talked about Ole Miss in the last 50 years has only had 4 top 12 finishes. We know about Eli in 2003. And the other 3 of those 4
I covered that
under
one.
Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin. And so Kiffin, and I'm in Memphis, so I do have a lot of Ole Miss relationships and friends. And they were telling me, they said, Brown, his daughter's moved back here. She's going to school at Ole Miss. His son's come back. How good is life in Oxford, Mississippi, making $9+ million a year? I just think he's happier, and he's changed again in a lot of ways. But what's the ceiling on Ole Miss? I don't think there is a ceiling with NIL anymore.
So Lane's an interesting guy too. I remember doing a big story, and this is a long time ago,
Yeah.
when Lane was, in a precarious situation at USC, right? He was a really young coach. I always say the funny thing about Lane Kiffin is his career has been backwards, right? He was an NFL coach at like 32.
Yeah.
Then he gets, that doesn't work out at the Raiders, but the Raiders are a little dysfunctional. And he's in Tennessee at, mid 30s, and then he's at USC. Like, it all happened very fast for Lane. And I always felt like Lane was a really good coach who kind of had a little too much too soon before he became, more of an adult, frankly. And that's okay. When I was 35, I was barely an adult too. Like, so and now he's at a point. And so then he had to recalibrate his career, right? He goes back to FAU and he has to rebuild again, go his time at Alabama as offensive coordinator. But he's always had such a weird career. He's a good coach. He's a great offensive mind. And you're right. The NIL structure has allowed Ole Miss to maybe bring in a little more talent. I will say, though, it's hard not to look at last year as a real missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they definitely had a roster, and I don't agree with Lane bashing the playoff selections. Yeah. But I do agree with this, because I think Lane and Ole Miss should have taken care of business against Kentucky or Florida, and you would have got in the playoff if you would have done that.
Yeah.
But I will say this. That was absolutely the team of all the teams I felt that got left out from the SEC that I thought not only could that team maybe be in the play, should that team maybe be in the playoff, that team could win a couple of playoff games.
Yeah.
But hey, man, you gotta win your games that you're supposed to win. So I think last year was a bit of a missed opportunity for Ole Miss and Lane, and I'm interested to see how that looks again, right? They loaded up again in the transfer portal, not quite the star power of last year.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to, they don't recruit high school level quite at that, like Alabama, Georgia level. So I do wonder if you can replicate what they had last year again at Ole Miss, just through the transfer portal every year. I think that's a little challenging. Not that they're going to fall off the map, but I just do think that like they were set to do something big last year with Dart and everything they had surrounding them, and it slipped away. And I do wonder if that, like, I don't, again, I think they can still be competitive, but I don't know if they have that level of roster again this year. We'll see.
Yeah, well, you think about it, you cannot lose at home to Kentucky like they did last year, and then LSU.
If they win that game. Yeah. They win that game and they beat LSU. They had a lead there. So, like, again, like, I definitely see what he says when he talks about, like, they had a good roster. They had a team that could compete with anybody in the country. They blew the doors off of Georgia, for goodness sake. But, you kind of got to win those games that you're supposed to win there. And, again, I felt like it was a big missed opportunity for Ole Miss. And, listen, I understand. I think Lane is pretty happy. I think Coach Kiffin is pretty happy in Oxford, but I would also say that there might be a handful of jobs open up this year, depending on how things go in the SEC.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you this, I don't know if he will leave, but I guarantee you his name will be attached to a lot of those jobs.
Oh yeah. Jimmy Sexton's his agent in Memphis. Trust me.
No doubt. Yeah.
A lot of pay raises coming, man. All right. A couple of more things before you go, and really appreciate your time, folks. This is Ralph Russo with us, senior college football writer for The Athletic. You probably remember him, long time, 20 years with the AP, their national college football writer. What a treat to have you. God, you know your stuff. Okay, so easy segue. We talk about South Carolina. Shane Beamer, Ellis Johnson is on with us on Mondays. He's over in South Carolina, and he's got a son. Charlie's a PWO on the team at Clemson, so he goes out there with Dabo a few days a week, watches practice, trying to get Dabo on the show. I think that'll be fun. I'm not going to change, but you're always going to take some transfers. I mean, it was going on when you and I were in college. South Carolina last year got that deal done with Lenora Sellers late. He's a big, strong, physical guy. They went 9-3 last year. They felt like they got left off.
And had a good case, yeah.
The standard South Carolina in their history, one conference championship. I think in 1969, 7-4 in the ACC. And Clemson, the other in-state school, has won 22 or 23 ACC titles. Are they serious more than you can ever remember about football at South Carolina, or is it just, again, NIL?
Well, I will put it this way. It's one of the remarkable things about South Carolina is despite the fact that they don't have a ton of banners, I can be very confident in saying they've always been very serious about football. It's one of the more remarkable things, right? Williams-Brice Stadium, they get 80,000 even in years where they're struggling along. I do think, again, like a lot of places, NIL changes the math a little bit. So that helps and allows them to maybe retain some talent like Lenora Sellers. I would also, I'll be the bad guy here. My one concern, like I was with Ole Miss, my one concern about South Carolina is this. That defense last year was awesome. And I know Dylan Stewart, the great freshman, is back, but a lot of other components from that defense, you're going to hear their names over the next few days in Green Bay at the NFL draft, right? Kyle Kennard, I think TJ Stewart, a couple of linebackers. They got some dudes who are going to get drafted over the next few days. Emmanwori, I'm gonna mess up his name, so I'm not even gonna say the safety, the really athletic safety there. So I just wonder, like, as good as they were last year, South Carolina, you're taking a big chunk of that defense. That was the best part of that team. I assume the offense will get better because Sellers will get better. He will develop. But man, like you're taking a whole bunch of dudes off that defense, and what does that look like in 2025?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to win without great defensive linemen. It's hard to quail hunt without great dogs. I mean, you can't do it.
And they were about as good as any in the country last year. I mean, they were right up there, top 3 or 4 in the country in terms of defensive lines and defensive, front sevens.
And same thing with Ole Miss. Hey, Buddy Martin is on here.
Martin, how are you?
What's up, Ralph? Been a long time. Good to see you. Congratulations on all your latest.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's very good to see you too. I hope you're well.
I'm doing fine. Ralph and I go back a long way. How's everything in Ferris City these days? Are you still in New York?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, sir. Yeah. I still in New York. Still, traveled around a little bit, but bounced back to New York and settled here with my wife and daughter a while ago. A small family, so we don't need a lot of space, so we can live in Brooklyn.
There you go. Great town right now. Brooklyn.
Things are great. Things are great. Yeah. We as a native of New York, it ain't perfect, but I love it a lot.
That's what New York is. It's I just think of Brooklyn. Remember the day I went over there to see at a funeral in Brooklyn back in the 70s, and it was a different town then, and it's now become a chic place. And
a little bit.
Where are you? Where are you in Brooklyn?
We are in Park Slope, which is one of those shishi places. A little bit. Again,
there you go. Well, it's good to see you again. I heard what you're saying. I didn't mean to interrupt your conversation. I've been having a fight this morning with some of my listeners and some of my friends, Shane Matthews, on this program about these changes. And I know it's obviously a new world. It's not like it was years ago. And things like standards and values and principle kind of go out with the money. And I get it's a business. That's fine. But I wanted to ask you, it's okay for people to take money, obviously, and who wouldn't? We would. If you're working for the AP and the Athletic must have offered you $300,000, at least more than you're making, you're going to take that job. I get it. But don't ask me.
It wasn't that much more, but yeah, I get
Well, you mean the salaries at the AP have changed a little bit, I know. But anyway, so the bottom line is that here's the question I have for you. I get it. You're going to take the money, all right? But you don't get the skates. If you're Denzel Aberdeen and you go to Kentucky, which you just did for a lot of money, and Florida elected not to spend money to keep him, that's okay. But now we've had the basketball coach go to Georgia, running back from Florida going to Georgia. We had a defensive end go to LSU. Don't expect when you come to town, everybody to say kumbaya, because I know if they were Red Sox going to the Yankees, what's happened in the past, even though Babe Ruth did do that reverse.
Yes, that's the same.
It's not the same, and you don't expect to be loved.
No, listen, when the Mets play the Yankees this year, Juan Soto is going to get booed. by the Yankees fans, and that's okay. And as a Mets fan, I'm okay with that because as long as he's on my side, he's good by me.
Yeah.
I do understand that. And so I'll take that to another level. What I worry about with some of these guys who do bounce around a lot is that, first of all, there's an education component. I don't want to totally gloss over that. I think sometimes that gets used a little bit as a cudgel against these guys. Hey, listen, they're doing a job. I think they deserve the money. But if you're bouncing around too much, it is nice to get that degree. And I do think if you do too much moving around, you're probably going to lose the opportunity to do that. I would also say this, that, think about, sort of as you said, like when you return, like where is your home? Where is the place where you can go back and say, these are my guys and I will always be taken care of here, right? I mean, like the one cool thing about being a college football player is that, especially at some of these big SEC schools, is that once you're a college football player for the Gators or for LSU or wherever you want, like you are that player, you are that for life. And you are always welcome in that town. And there are going to be opportunities for you, jobs for you. You are always going to find a place to have a soft landing. And if you go to 3 or 4 schools within the course of your career, or maybe 2 or 3, and depending on when you move, you may lose that. So I think that's unfortunate. And not to get too long-winded here, but I do think as this system evolves and we are getting more professional without question, I do think there are mechanisms to maybe tamp down some of the movement so it's not, especially in basketball, guys just bouncing around so much where teams are completely changing over. I think we're still in a period of evolution, guys. I think we're still probably 2 or 3 years away from a lot of trial and error, but I don't want to oversell it. I do see like a little bit of hope down the road that in about 2 or 3 years, there'll be a system which is not going to be like the old system. And there's going to be a lot of money being thrown around that maybe has a little more order in it and structure.
Well, I think the canary in the coal mine, honestly, is Wall Street. What commissions used to be, what they are now because of transparency and Bloomberg, that's where we're going in college football. But, and I got to say, I know, Ralph, we kept you long, but having Buddy come on is cool as hell. I was watching Buddy last night on Saturdays Down South, that great thing that ESPN did and SEC Network about college football. Buddy's there in a plaid shirt, which is not Florida. Usually it's a beach shirt. But, I mean, it was so cool to watch you last night, and here you are, Ralph. And I know you got to go, but I said today you're going to love college football after you hear Ralph Russo. And I second that, okay? Because you're proud to be from Brooklyn. Of course, I grew up watching Welcome Back, Kotter, America's 4th largest city. Can't forget that sign, but I love it in New York. Buddy used to live there, but every time I go there, I go, those people are cool as hell up there. So probably all of our families lived there for a week or two when they came through Ellis Island. But you are so passionate. I would think that you live in the South, but you travel so much. But thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And I know Buddy may have another question, but make sure you let people know how they can follow you, and we'll let you go. But want to get you back on here again soon because this was awesome stuff.
Well, the best way you can follow me on X is Ralph D. Russo ATH. Ralph D. Russo ATH on X, and you can find me on Blue Sky, the other app over there if you want to go there, and of course at The Athletic. If you hopefully all have a subscription, I want to sum this up real quick, and I do appreciate you very much for having me on. I would always say, like, I know the game is changing off the field a lot, and it's not easy, and I don't love all of it either, but when we get to Saturday, it's still awesome, right? Yeah. And I think that we still have Saturdays that are great. The games are still great. The players are better than ever. So I think people who get a little bit skeptical and maybe feel like, oh man, college football is not the way I used to be. Folks, Saturday is still awesome. Hold on to Saturday. Last thing is, Buddy is and guys of his generation, Tony Barnhart, those are the legends. You told me, like, those are the legends. I very much appreciate guys like that paving the way for dopes like me to have a career.
Ralph, I could just say one comment, Ralph. It's good to hear from you. I just want to say that usually it's Rob who's a get off the lawn guy. He's the guy. He's that guy. But I'm feeling more and more in that direction of things like Denzel Aberdeen I mean, the question becomes, if one thing I love about New York City, once you're theirs, and you come back 100 years later, you don't buy a drink anywhere in town. New Yorkers hold on to their people forever. I love that about them. But what happens if we keep having these deals where guys are going to the other teams? Eventually, we either stop caring or we become get off the two. And
I agree.
So there you go.
Hey, Ralph, when you come down to a game in Auburn, let me know in advance, and I'll bring you to our tailgate. We will feed you. Hopefully, you'll be able to still write, but we will feed you and give you everything you want, okay?
Sounds good to me, Rob. Thank you very much. And very good seeing you, buddy. Always a pleasure to come on.
Good to
Thanks,
see
guys.
you, Ralph. Take care.
Take care. Thank you so much. What a treat, man, buddy. Let me say something real quick. Here comes Yancey Porter, Landers Ford, folks, located at Poplar and Houston Levee, where Memphis meets Collierville. Open every day of the week except Sunday. The old saying, Sunday, the day means more than the dollar. So take off on Sundays, but they're open 7 a.m., 7 p.m. every day. Service department, what a nightmare. You always got to find somebody. Can you give me a ride? No, they will come pick you up at your home, your office, the gym, whatever, provide round-trip transportation. Landers Ford, they've got the 25 Expeditions in stock. They're coming in now. They got those Broncos, the Ford F-150, which is what I drive, four-wheel drive. It's not a truck if it doesn't have four-wheel drive, but I love my F-150, LandersFordMemphis.com. And you saw before that, Hewlett and Dunn. Get out there, folks. All the spring stuff's coming in. Duck heads, Filson, Barber, men's and women's boots. I got Audrey a new pair of some Ariat boots that were out there yesterday she wanted, but Hewlett and Dunn open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Yancey, that was Ralph Russo, former AP National College Football writer, now senior college football writer with The Athletic, having a lively discussion about the SEC. And Buddy popped in from down at the beach. And hopefully Rodney or Tyler Insider will be on here in a minute. But we're getting the band going up here together, man. It's in Red Rocks, but it's close to it. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm ready for Red Rocks this summer.
Yeah. I went and saw Sturgill Simpson last week, and he played for almost 4 hours, by the way. But
he can put on a show.
Oh, my God, yeah. Hey, you can catch Yancey Monday nights, buddy, and everybody, 6 p.m., Sports 56, WHBQ Memphis, and all over the great state of Mississippi on Super Talk. It's two syllables, Mississippi, Super Talk Mississippi, and he knows the Rebels inside out. Yancey, say hello to Buddy.
Buddy, say hello and goodbye. My tax accountant's calling me.
I just got done with mine, buddy.
You take
it's taking me a few days to get over it.
All right, Rob, I know you'll be on the show tonight with Lauren. So
looking forward to it.
Out, Rob. All right, thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Thank you, buddy. Love you, man. Be good.
See you, buddy.
Hey, that is so much fun. I mean, we got Ralph Russo on from up in Brooklyn. Oh, look at Red Rocks in the background. Brendan, Yancey, let me tell you something. Yesterday, there was an internet fire down in Ocala. And, we're off today. We find excuses to win. Brendan is amazing. I told you yesterday, he actually, last year, one time in the summer, they had a big storm. He followed an 18-wheeler throughout the show because it had Wi-Fi on the interstate. That was I-4, I think it was, or 75. Amazing. Let's talk some Ole Miss football. I saw a pretty cool podcast. I don't know who did it. Lane Kiffin, 3 of the 4 top 12 finishes in the last 50 years for Ole Miss have occurred during his time. My Ole Miss friends, I warned them. I said, y'all are going to get mad at 9 and 10 win seasons. You're going to want 12, 13, and 14. But that's what it's going to take. Do you agree with me? I think the Rebels are knocking on that door. The fact that they're lamenting a 9-3 or 10-3 with the bowl game, that's a great sign. I know it sounds crazy, but I think it's a great sign.
Yeah, I think last year's expectations were definitely playoff or bust. It was a disappointing season. I mean, let's be frank about it. This season, there's so much turnover. 17 of the 22 starters are gone, graduated, NFL, all that good stuff. So it's a lot of turnover, but I mean, look, he's ahead of the curve in this portal game. I was at Lenore's on the 15th. I guess that was Tuesday night, or I'm trying last maybe Friday, Saturday. I can't. What are we on the 22nd right now? Whatever
Yes,
a
it is
week
the
ago
22nd.
was
Yeah, yeah.
last Tuesday, last
The
Wednesday, somewhere
15th.
around there. And he had five kids sit at the table the very first day on the 15th from different schools, and they've already gotten 6 portal players. And I mean, it's just he's on top of it.
We talked about last year. There was so much talent on the defensive front. You said 12 defensive linemen the coaches could
Yeah.
trust. What are those
hmm
numbers like right now?
Well, they lost one, their fourth defensive tackle that's been in the system for this would have been his third year. Keely Stone, he entered the portal, and that you can't take away experience. Someone that's been in the system 3 years. He came from Georgia Tech, and I think he's visiting Florida State and North Carolina, if I'm hearing correctly. And so the portal giveth and it taketh. He was kind of beaten out by a freshman, William Eccles, as for that third swing spot there at tackle, and he's a fifth or sixth year senior, and he wants to get a little bit more playing time, I guess. So he's gone, but they feel really good. That's the strength of the team again is going to be that front seven. I think they got a lot more depth at linebacker than they've had in years, which is good because they lost their whole defensive front, but they had 6 freshmen tutoring behind those guys that were all highly ranked, top 100 recruits. And Randall Joyner does an excellent job there on the defensive line. He's one of the premier defensive line coaches and recruiters in the country, and they're in good shape there. They're going to be not nearly as experienced, but they picked up 2 of the 3 top defensive ends, from Nebraska and LSU, and so they added some experience there at the ends, big guys, both of them in the 6'5", 275 range. So they're flexible enough where they can swing inside, outside. So I think that front seven is going to be really salty. Um, they just picked up a couple portal defensive backs, and they got 2 more in town coming in this weekend. They're going to add 4 or 5 defensive backs in the spring portal, and that's really where they continue to try to get more depth and add some length, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is so competitive but having the front seven with depth is the best thing you can hear. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider folks, break open your piggy bank, let it flow. $48 a year. You will get more information on the Crimson Tide than you will from all the other places combined. Can't beat it. And on Tuesday nights, Gary Harris and Rodney Orr do a great show called Tighter Insider TV. You can watch it anywhere. It's on YouTube channel from there at WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa. These guys are literally the boots, the pen and pad on the ground. They started when you did it by hand. They understand the electronic media, but the forums on Tighter Insider are unmatched anywhere. Rodney Orr, the founder, how are you? Good morning. Welcome, and thank you for sharing your time with us 2 days after Easter Sunday.
Well, thank you guys. Good to be with you. Hope you're both doing well.
Yeah.
Sounds like Yancey's getting a lot of portal action over there.
Well, it never stops. You know that with Lane. That's going to be it for the time to the day he dies. I mean, it's amazing. Like I said, the very first day they got 5 portal kids in. Just business as usual with him.
Yeah, it's the way he does it. And it's interesting to hear your analysis of them. You mentioned the front seven. That's going to be a real key for Alabama, I think, defensively. Is how does this defensive line and front seven kind of come together? On that side of the ball, and secondary looks to be loaded with talent. Certainly loaded with a lot of young talent and potential.
Yeah, Rodney,
Rodney,
last year going into the season, it was more about the defensive backs and the offensive line, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this year, it's kind of flipped. Now the secondary's loaded, and There's a few question marks there in that front seven, but I don't think I mean, Freddie Roach has been there for so many years and knows that program inside out and tutored under Saban. I've got confidence in Freddie that he's going to put up a formidable defensive line for the Tide.
I'm going to ask you this, Rodney, about what Yancey just mentioned. The defensive front. That was when Nick Saban was there and you had Bo Davis, it was phenomenal. You had Jeremy Pruitt, you had Kirby Smart, you had some incredible defensive coordinators. Pete Golding's now at Ole Miss. In year 2 for Kalen DeBoer, what has to happen for them to get into double-digit wins? Because they had done it, I think, 16 straight years until last year. 16 out of 17 years that Nick Saban was there. And again, that first year he was there, I bet if he had his way, he probably would have gotten rid of 35 or 40% of that team, but he couldn't because it wouldn't have been fair to the other players.
Well, what has to happen, I think, first of all, is they've got to play with consistency. I mean, you can't beat LSU one week and fold the next week against Oklahoma. I mean, you can't beat Georgia and then lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, pitiful efforts. Just, I don't know how else to phrase it. I mean, it really was. Now, I'm not meaning all around the whole team, but in certain spots, I mean, against Vanderbilt, the offense shows up, scores 35 points in 18 minutes of possession time, and the defense gives up 40 points, can't get off the field.
Yeah.
Against Oklahoma, the offense is turning the ball over. The defense doesn't play really poorly, although they did give up 257 yards rushing, I think, to a team that really hadn't been very good offensively. But, so they have to show up with consistency, Rob. I think that's the key and play. You got to know what to expect. And, I think last year from week to week, you didn't know what to expect. Against LSU, you watch them and you thought they're turning the corner. And then they fall completely flat against Oklahoma on the road. So I think they have to get better on the road. In this year, they start off on the road at Tallahassee, Florida State. That's going to be a really big game.
Yeah, and Yancey, you just referenced another player from Georgia Tech in the portal. I look at schools across the SEC just pillaging Georgia Tech, and I mean this seriously. Georgia Tech better get their NIL program going, and other schools too, or schools run the risk of becoming farm system teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ole Miss has gotten a handful of them and been very successful. Probably the most successful out of all of them was Jared Ivey, that will be in the draft this year, defensive end for Ole Miss. Played some inside as well, but I mean, I don't know Georgia Tech's NIL behind doors where they stand and what's going on, but they were losing a lot too. So it's not all about the money. When the money's comparable, a lot of times these players, they want to go somewhere where they can win, especially when they're an upperclassman, so they can get looked at by the draft. I mean, let's be honest, most of it is about the draft, right? So you go to a school like Alabama in the past, and you can go up there and be on national TV every week, and where the scouts are watching you every game, you got a lot better chance of getting drafted higher. So that becomes into play as well.
Well, and Georgia Tech, big engineering school, they're probably thinking too much about it. But I know from friends in Atlanta that know that program that they're big. They've got a lot of wealthy alumni. I can promise you that. But why do they want to invest in something that they're just supplying other teams with players? And Rodney, along that line, would you agree that Major League Baseball does a lot to help baseball development, with farm systems, farm teams, and there's a lot of back and forth between college baseball teams and Major League Baseball? The NFL is tighter than a clam with lockjaw when it comes to spending money on anything other than the NFL. Why hasn't the NCAA, or why hasn't a group of college power brokers gone to the NFL and said, God, help us out with this NIL? we're providing you all these players and you're not doing anything financially to help us.
Well, Rob, I don't know, man. I mean, that's something I've really never thought about, to be truthful with you. I'd like to hear more of what your idea is, though.
Well, simply saying, could you take, the NFL makes so much money and they have no respect. Honestly, think about it. They went when college football put their playoff Saturday, December 20th or 21st, the NFL went right up against them with the playoffs. And so or with the regular games, my reasoning is, say, help us out with giving money, an equal amount of money to, I don't know if I don't know if you could really do that, but financially they could do something to help, because you look at kids are leaving for 1 year for $800,000. Well, what if that guy gets hurt in the second game? That's $800,000. If the NFL somehow could help the colleges with this, pay for part of this stuff, because the colleges, the fans are going broke supporting it. That's all I'm saying is take some of that TV
I don't
money
think there's any doubt what you're saying about, fans and donors are, eventually this is going to pan out where I just don't know that it's going to be able to continue. I think Tuberville referred to it as donor fatigue. But I mean, eventually, I don't know how it can keep on. I mean, people are asked. It's like I said, a couple of years ago. $5 million this year. It's going to take $10 million a year or two from now. Then it's going to take $15 million. Then it's going to take, and it's going to keep going up and up and up. You see the demands of what athletes, whether it's basketball, football, they're, the demands now to get these players is pretty incredible. Yancey had the way he described Kiffin's philosophy. Obviously Kiffin wants to live in the portal. That's kind of the philosophy that they have. Build it around the portal, kind of fill in with really good high school players, maybe, the best players in Mississippi and the best ones that they attract. Alabama kind of, on the other hand, it's almost a little bit like Dabo. If you look at what Kalen DeBoer's doing. Now, it may not be quite to that extreme. I don't think Dabo likes to bring anyone in from the portal, though. I think he has kind of relented and brought a couple of guys in.
Yeah.
He's brought a few.
He's relented and brought a few. But DeBoer is kind of the same way. They want to build with their high school recruiting, develop the players that they get, and then fill in spots with an Isaiah Horton or Nakai Hill Green or Cam Calhoun, whoever it is. Last year was Jeremy Bernard and Parker Brailsford, and that's kind of the way they're doing it. It's not like they're making the portal the focus. They want to recruit, evaluate, recruit, develop, and retain. And that's kind of what they're doing, right now. They're not even like right now, they're looking for a backup offensive tackle, a third guy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me that the clear evidence, all you need to do is look at, Florida just wins the national championship in basketball, the men. And you got a guy like Denzel Aberdeen. I'm out of here. I'm going to Kentucky. He obviously doesn't care that he's on a team. He would be the reigning national champion. He's going to Kentucky for the money.
It's amazing.
And look, I promise you, we're not the old, guys, get off of my lawn. And you can't get old unless you're smart. There's a little bit of luck involved, but I think, Yancey, when you told us several years ago that $350 million Vaught Hemingway retrofit for one side of the stadium was put on hold so they could spend that money on NIL. Look, we could be playing at Jackson Memorial Stadium or Crampton Bowl in Montgomery or Crump Stadium. You could play in a absolute dump of a stadium as long as you're paying your guys NIL money. They don't care. And we went and Florida built the Hefner Center. Auburn built the Starship Enterprise, $92 million. Perfect timing for NIL. And now the kids, do you ever hear a kid going, man, that weight room was great? The facilities are great. College of Engineering was great. It's like, how much? That's all they give a damn about. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, who could blame them though? I mean, if
no,
I'm a
I
kid
don't
and I
blame
can
them.
make $2-4 million, I mean, the money has just gotten great. Portal transfers in basketball now cost $4 million. Top high school recruits cost $4 million. Championship level starters on hoops are getting $2 million average. I mean, this was all. I mean, Ole Miss's highest paid player last year was Matthew Morrell, and he was making a little under $1 million.
Yeah.
And now, that would be like the ninth guy on the bench.
Whoa.
Basketball has doubled. I mean, Ole Miss is working with about 5 million last year with basketball, and it's a little about 10.2 million this year. So, I mean, that doubled. I mean, it's just I don't know where it stops, and as long as the court system keeps throwing it all out there where they you can't stop it. I don't know what you do.
Yeah.
We thought revenue sharing was gonna be the capper, right? That's what it was originally intended for, is to share the revenue with the players that they had not done in the past. But then with the collectives, right? They try to come in and say, well, the NCAA was like, we're going to give you fair market value of what that commercial you're cutting for, or whatever you're advertising for your name, image, and likeness. But look, if you're in LA and you're doing a signing or a commercial for a big time restaurant out there versus Tuscaloosa or Oxford, it's going to be a hell of a lot more fair market value. So then what happens to every school that in a big urban town, right? You're at a
Yeah.
disadvantage. And the
Yeah.
court system said, no, you can't do that. You can't limit what they can make on their name, image, and likeness. Now, it's on an appellate, and they're trying to get that appealed. But as long as the courts keep saying, hey, it's a free for all, well, it's going to be a free for all.
Yeah. And you're talking about Los Angeles. I talked with Harper LaBelle last week, and he's from Los Angeles, played in the NFL 11 years, lives in Atlanta, about that market. And it's a massive market. So everything automatically costs money, even if it's not worth it. Rodney, I think the term I would use is it's like price gouging, okay, or collusion. Because if you put out how much money you have in your NIL bank account, then you're going to spend every bit of it. We all know with having kids, if your kid asks you money for a book fair, and you say, "Well, how much do you need?" They're going to say, "Well, how much do you have?" I mean, they never read all those books. At some point, maybe the thing with Nico, golly, boy, did he make a stupid move, because did his father? They're from California. Not realize they have a 13.25% state income tax. They don't have a state income tax in Tennessee. I'm going to put Nico's father up for a Darwin Award. Okay, Rodney.
Yeah, I didn't even know they were paying taxes on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard what you're saying. I was aware that, that, but I mean, I heck, I mean, I guess they're getting 1099s. Is that right, Yancey?
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's another interesting thing. The Grove Collective, the way it used to work was that they automatically took the taxes out of each monthly check.
Ah,
I think.
yeah.
Well, we lost him. The IRS knocked him off the air.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you back. Big Brother
So
took you off the air.
what's going on with that is I think the court system says you can't take the taxes out automatically for them without their maybe permission or written
Wow.
statement saying that they can. So now the players, they don't get the taxes taken out of their checks, from what I hear. And I mean, that's coming in a couple years. All these players are going to be owing the IRS, probably maybe some millions of dollars, and they're going to
Yeah.
be they're going to owe it to them for life. I mean, the IRS is not something you can just say wash your hands with. I don't owe it to you anymore with interest. I mean, it's going to be bad, because a lot of
Yeah.
these players and families are not thinking about that, and that's going to be an interesting thing to follow in the next several years. Is all these players who end up owing the IRS millions of dollars.
Well, here's the thing. When you have to put on there, do you want us to withhold 10 or 20%, whatever, if you're taking money out of an account? But I was in an NIL collective meeting, and the speaker said, okay, we can do the taxes for you, or, if y'all want to. And a lot of the adults were like, oh, yeah, we'll take care of that. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and what's
And
going to
it's the
happen?
parents.
Yeah,
It's the parents again, Rob. I mean,
Yeah.
the parents are the ones that are, like Lane said just last week in a podcast. He said the first thing that the parents, when they get there, is when is our NIL meeting? Not, let's go see the facilities. Let's meet with the academic advisors. Let's
Yeah.
look at the depth chart. Let's do the very first thing out of their mouths is when is our NIL meeting?
Yeah.
So and
That's right.
it's something.
Well, there needs to be a class mandatory. I don't like rules. I don't like a lot of rules, but be simple. Financial literacy. Because think about if either of us three or Brendan were those athletes and someone offered you an NIL deal for $10 million to go to whatever school. I know in my case, I would have not been able to touch it. Even though I would have been an adult, that would have been put away in a brokerage account. So long term, it was going to be there because an 18-year-old with millions of dollars, come on, man. Can we say Red Rocks and Spreadhead and Deadhead, if they were still around? I mean, they would just be a traveling circus. And so an interest compounds daily, interest and penalties with the IRS. I actually had a guy with a collective say, we had one of our student athletes. I'm not kidding y'all. I hope you're not driving because you'll go off the road. The kid said, well, why do I have to pay taxes? I've already spent the money.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to be these next 5 years when, there'll be a 30 for 30 and all that kind of good stuff about it, following these kids that were getting paid X amount of dollars and didn't pay taxes on it during their college career and didn't make the NFL and wasn't able to pay those taxes on it. They're going to be owing the IRS millions of dollars. And it's, then I'm afraid what's going to happen is the only way that they're going to be able to make the money, that they grew up in crime ridden neighborhoods and stuff like that is they start, doing illegal activities to try to pay off that big debt.
Yeah,
That's a worry of mine.
Watch the ESPN 30 for 30 episode. I think it's called Going Broke or Going for Broke. Guys spending out in a club, spending $50,000 on a bottle of champagne. Now, you really have to be – my watch cost $39.95. It'll tell the same time as somebody with a $30,000 brand name watch. Mine's a Timex Ironman, just for informational purposes. Rodney, Yancey speaks with such wisdom. I would think he was he reminds me of Matlock, the Andy Griffith character, because he's smart. He's right. And so are you. Are you hearing any horror stories of people not keeping up and, basic stuff? But I mean, financial literacy, it's something that I've learned, and I've learned some lessons the hard way. But dang, man, one of the wealthiest people I knew used to tell people when he was single and divorced, people said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a rodeo clown. And it was amazing to watch the reaction on people's faces. Nothing against rodeo clowns because they can make some good money. But you got an 18-year-old driving a Lamborghini, Carson Beck, is just a red flag.
Huh. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, as far as the horror stories, I'm sure a lot of those are to come. But I'll say this. Here's the thing that's going to be interesting. These schools, here's some things I have heard. Some of these schools, even last year, and I'm talking about in the SEC, almost had walkouts. Almost had players, multiple players, groups of players walking out because they didn't get their pay. Ugh. They hadn't received their pay. So I heard of one prominent school, it's not Alabama, but one prominent school that really faced a difficult situation. It'd surprise you who it was. And this is coming from somebody who's high up in administration at a university. So you wonder, are we ever going to face something like, hey, you're getting ready to watch game day and all of a sudden the headlines or, hey, well, so much for that Georgia-Tennessee game today. The Georgia players have walked out,
Hey,
so.
it's coming. Look, we got to wrap up, but man, I thank you all both so much for sharing your time with us. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, folks, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, two of the smartest guys around, and that was preceded by Ralph Russo, senior college football writer for The Athletic, and Buddy Martin chimed in. That was so cool. I think we're going to solve this, and it's going to be in a way we're probably not even thinking about. But both of y'all know this. Once the games start and the best thing for fans is when the players are wearing the pads. And because that's all we think about then are the games,
No question. I honestly, I think the product's even better now,
Yeah.
because you're able to go through spring drills and figure out what you need and, patch up those areas and experience players. And I think the product's even better. We just got to figure out the financial side because it's not
Yeah.
sustainable at this rate.
Yeah. I think that it's like, hey, how many times can our kids keep asking us for an advance on their allowance? Just think about that. That's what I would say. It's like, okay, well, go out and do something. NIL can work. Hey, I would take the money if I was 18. I've also been 18, and I've been the age I'm at now. And I know at 18, I wasn't as good with money, and I hadn't learned what I know now. So I think that's what it boils down to. Guys, and have a great week. Okay, let me say, awesome show. Brendan, incredible executive producer, Brendan Martin. I'll be on Gator Bait, the Buddy Martin Show tonight with Lauren Meadows, Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern on this channel. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Mother Teresa said it best. We can't all do everything, but we can all do something. Go make something great happen. Put a smile on everyone's face. See you tomorrow. See you tonight.